in Minneapolis, going door to door at suspected fraud sites. Joining us to discuss is Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So Tony, good to have you here. We all saw that video, right, by independent journalist Nick Shirley, showing what appears to be like fraud occurring in daycare centers in Minnesota. And because of that, I think we're seeing national backlash over this situation. You know, the video getting over 120 million views in just a couple days. Shirley alleges they were able to cover over $110 million in fraud in one day. Were you surprised by what you saw in that video?
Unfortunately, Don, no, I wasn't. As a former educator, someone who worked in the public education system, someone who worked a lot in the education grant system, both as an education policy advisor for Governor Walker in Wisconsin, and then, of course, running chalkboard review after my time in the Indiana and Wisconsin education systems. This kind of fraud is rather typical in areas where the terms of equity and inclusion are put above kind of common sense. So the backlash from those on the left, let's say, to Nick Shirley's investigation has been rather interesting. People have tried to claim that the Quality Luring Center had at one point closed back in July, and he had obfuscated that. He didn't. And then they said, actually, no, it was open last week, and then it wasn't. Now, apparently, it's only open for 2 hours a day. There were kids there yesterday, but not today. That's not at all in conjunction with the Minneapolis public school systems. There's a lot of weird stuff here that is just getting millions and millions of federal grant dollars that you're paying for. And then also on top of that, Tim Walz has pushed a lot of effective measures through, effective in the financial sense, on increasing Minnesota taxes to go to these facilities as well. No one's checking, no one's looking, and it is a national issue, not just in Minnesota.
Okay, Tony, I just want to be clear here. Are you saying that DEI policies in part is contributing to this fraud situation?
Unequivocally, without a doubt. When you put the idea that someone's skin color or someone's language that they speak means that they are entitled to special privileges here in the United States, then that ends up covering up for a lot of things like fraud. When you say, hey, you come from this other place, you must have had it really bad, so we're going to give you money, we're going to give you housing, we're going to give you free transportation, and then we're just going to trust that you'll take care of it. What we found in the Minnesota Somali migrant community are a group of individuals who did not come to this country, did not assimilate, did not adopt its values, but instead have utilized fraud all the way from political campaigns to healthcare to education to real estate to restaurant to charity to non-governmental organization. It is without a doubt the largest, most coordinated fraud scandal in the history of this country. It makes the Teapot Dome scandal of the late 1800s and early 1900s look like child's play.
Tony, where does accountability lie?
Accountability lies in two places. First of all, it lies in the community. So when you are part of a community and you turn a blind eye to active fraud that is hurting those around you, you are part of the problem. If I am part of a small community, let's take it back to the South in the late 1800s. If there was an individual who was innocent that was being persecuted based along racial lines, you have a duty as an individual to stand up for those in your community. You are a citizen of the United States, which means you have a responsibility to flag authorities when the law is being violated. So the first measure of accountability is finding out those who turned a blind eye to things like this, whether that be someone in the community or adjacent to the community. Second, those who are in law enforcement leadership in the Minneapolis and greater Twin Cities areas need to be held accountable. They need to be banned from public service, and there need to be charges, both state and federal, filed. And yes, that includes Governor Tim Walz, who has continued to funnel money in. He targeted the state's legislative auditor. There's an auditor position that the legislature of the Minnesota state government appoints. Tim Walz cut that person off at the knees a couple of years ago when they started to ask questions about this. And he was almost the vice president of the United States. There is a serious level of accountability failure in the DNC politically, but also in the Minnesota state governor all the way up to Tim Walz.
So you're saying the community and officials both hold a responsibility. So let me ask you this. What would being held to account look like in this situation?
Well, first of all, I would believe that any individual who is here that is not a citizen of the United States that either participated or knew about this fraud needs to be shipped back home immediately. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what color you are. If you are part of an organization, if you are part of a community and you are here illegally or you're here in a temporary status and you either aided and abetted or knew of and chose not to say anything about the rampant fraud that took place here, sorry, you're clearly not interested in assimilating in the United States. Get out. Number two, if you are someone who has come here to the United States and you are a citizen and you're an immigrant from another country, and then you have dishonored, you have broken the oath you took to the United States Constitution, I believe you should be denaturalized and you should be sent home as well. If you are a citizen of the United States, a native citizen, and you participated in this fraud, the maximum prison sentence and a disbarment from any public service for the rest of your life at a bare minimum. Because there are people who are freezing and starving in the state of Minnesota who do need aid, who are both natural U.S. citizens and naturalized U.S. citizens who do need services that now they may not have full access to because that money was stolen.
Okay, I just want to follow up on that point. You're saying that there are, in fact, people in Minnesota who need aid. Your comments on whether welfare system in Minnesota is overly generous or not?
I don't think it's an issue of the term overly generous per se, but money that is taken and then given needs to be accounted for and needs to be looked after. This is one of the reasons why I encourage local community charity organizations and private charities, is because there's a level of natural accountability that goes along with those things. Whereas when it becomes a level that you can meet, that you can then go to the state for a check, you don't usually find the state doing as good of a job keeping an eye on where those dollars go and what they're used for. This is where we get a lot of the EBT and the SNAP benefit fraud that Minnesota refused to turn data over to the federal government over. And that is disrespectful. That's disrespectful to the people of Minnesota or any state people whose government monopolizes some type of a welfare system. I'm not opposed to the idea of a safety net for any kind of community or state network, a jurisdiction perhaps, but it needs to be held accountable. Essentially, you need people to watch where those dollars are going, and those need to be transparently recorded.
Okay, Tony, just one last thing. Your comments on the governor's remarks on this situation. He said, quote, this was on my watch. I am accountable for this. And more importantly, I am the one that will fix it. What does he need to do?
I mean, it's really easy to come in hindsight 2020 and say, oh, gee, I didn't know all of this fraud was going on, except there's evidence that I did. And the buck stops with me. He doesn't actually say, I'm sorry, or excuse me, in the Minnesota parlance, I'm sorry. He doesn't come out and suggest that he's going to right these wrongs by addressing some of the root causes. Instead, he's called those who ask questions about this particular issue white supremacists. Again, if we can, obviously say he should resign, obviously he should submit himself for both state and federal investigation. That would be the moral thing to do. But this is the individual who considered it a cultural import to put tampons in boys' bathrooms in public schools. So I'm not really sure that we can expect that from Tim Walz anytime soon.
Well, all right, Tony, it's always good to speak with you. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Don.
If you think your deposit box at the bank is safe, think again. That's what hundreds of customers in Germany discovered after thieves broke into the vault room of their bank.